Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions.
Hello, welcome back to Otherworld Connections. In today's show, well, I'm still your host in today's show, Gino. We're looking at Bernard Rogers' 2013 book, The Initiatory Path in Fairy Tales, The Alchemical Secrets of Mother Goose. I'm getting closer and closer to the cheese. Like a rat, I am finding the information I've been looking for I've been studying for a while on fairy tales, and we are figuring out a framework on how to bring fairy tales back in their unexpunged form, unedited, fairy tales as they were for everybody to hear, of all ages. So let's figure out what to do, what is best to do, how to heal, how to change, how to achieve goals and live successful lives of service to others by making those Otherworld connections. Okay. So we are back to The Initiatory Path in Fairy Tales by Bernard Rogers, 2013 book, The Alchemical Secrets of Mother Goose. And there are certainly alchemical secrets there. And you know what I want to say is, because it's a blah, blah, blah show, is that there are different ways to interpret the symbols in the fairy tale, but you end up, as far as I'm concerned, in the same place. So I enjoy people commenting on these things because I get disagreements and they disagree and they explain why, and it turns out actually they agree but they think they disagree. And like I say, which is probably misunderstood, that different interpretations of these fairy tales obviously there's going to be a cultural influence and possibly a religious influence. People that disagree with me are into studying the Bible, but they haven't given me a decode. And if they were to give me a decode on the symbols, well, they'll probably end up in a similar place. And as we know how we've learnt through Otherworld Connections that the body affects the mind, and there is in the heart, and the body and the mind are all connected, and there's a heart-mind connection, and all of that connects to the spiritual. And what I'm trying to say is, you can fix mental issues with physical actions, and you can fix physical actions with mental actions, and vice versa, and all around other things. So if you've got stuck with your emotions, you can work on feeding your mind with nutrients, or working on changing the way you think about things. Or if you've got, say, a physical issue, same way. Or if you're stuck on everything, but actually you can move your body, well, you can work on your body to fix other things going on with your mind and with your feelings. And this is linking up to the concept of the trivium, the thoughts, the emotions and actions, and that these are all connected, and you got to get your mind right. But we have learned here on Otherworld Connections that you can get 2 out of the 3 lined up, and all your ducks in a row will line up. So say if you've got mental issues or you have problems with your mind, but you can work on your feelings and your actions, then your mind is going to toe the line. What's the point of my story here is that I really trailed off, going back to the fairy tales, is that you can get to the different interpretations might be working on different planes. As you've noticed on my decodings, that they're practical, they're sort of a how to live life type thing, and I think that is very important, rather than actual direct morals. And what I'm trying to say is that there's a pizza there's a pizza in the story, and someone might come along and say, I disagree, it's a Hawaiian pizza. But we're just talking about the pizza. What I'm saying is Hawaiian's a bad example, because I know people think Hawaiian pizza's sacrilege. But my point is, it's all pizza. It's just how you prefer to have your pizza. But what you need to know is that that's a pizza there. And that's the symbolism. That's the message. Alright, so anyway. Stories told by the stork. We are looking at the terms used for these old tales and the origins of those terms. So we've looked at blue stories, Mother Goose stories, old wives' tales, cock and bull stories, airy tales. And I suspect that from what I've said, especially cock and bull stories and blue stories, that some studies of fairy tales try to connect fairy tales to rude, dirty parlor stories that have been washed down or washed clean to make them suitable for children, which also goes along with the status quo of how we treat fairy tales. The other disagreement I get from fairy tales is that, oh yes, fairy tales, I don't really like them, or fairy tales, I think I was traumatized by them, or fairy tales, they're really, really inappropriate. All the stuff they have in them, it's unbelievable that they would read them to children. It's like, no, sorry everybody. Those things, I'm talking about the Grimm's fairy tales in particular, that they are literally designed for everybody. And my OG story of kids, it depends what you expose them to. And death is, the concept of death is, basically what I'm saying is young children know how to deal with this concept of death and understand death better than anybody else. 100% true. And death play is part of their learning and their play. They come up with it. You can't censor, natural growth, imagination, and ideas and play. And death is part of that. So going back to these idea of these dirty parlor stories that have been cleaned up. Well, that's what we continue to do to this day. That these stories are too violent, so we need to clean them up. And I wouldn't say it's a big industry, but there is a market for these old tales to be tidied up and represented to kids. And publishers are always looking for this, because also, timeless tales have that timeless thing and that universal appeal. But the thing that makes it really universal with the morals and the lessons inside, it gets taken away once we remove, especially the symbol of death, which is ironically a symbol of transformation and, transformation and going to a next stage. And if you think about all the people that are basically adult children out there, how important the concept of the symbol of death is in the early years, where symbols have a electromagnetic, like a gluing kind of effect on the lives of young children. And if you remove this idea of death from the lives of kids, I'm not saying you, and obviously we know from my work, if you have been following, that you don't want it to be sitting down with a 3-year-old and instructing them on what death is. That's how you get stupid people. You're supposed to be asking questions, and it's not like an interrogation. Adults are supposed to be in love and in curiosity with the world that the child sees. So, removing everything to do with death in the early childhood removes everything to do with transformation and change and growth. Growth, okay, I'm extending it there, but definitely change and transition. Because the system is set up for us to not change. We're not supposed to change and grow. They want us to stay as traumatized little kids. And that's why I do all the things that I do to try and, well, highlight that. So don't throw away the idea. Don't throw away the idea of fairy tales from maybe what you thought was your experience or just a thought, because going back to your childhood is a long, slow, painful, and arduous journey. Maybe your mind is playing tricks on you, but anyway. Stories told by the stork. These stories, we're reading the book now. These stories evoke the popular image of this large migratory bird in full flight, like an arrow in the sky, with its long feet tucked under its body and its beak clasped around a knotted cloth, inside of which lies a sleeping baby. Larousse, in his definition of these tales as whimsical or nonsensical, acknowledges that the term is ancient and compares it to a figure who appeared on the stages of puppet theatres at the side of Harlequin and Pulcinella. The fat mother Gigogne, famed for her large progeny and whose fertility included some to seek her name's origin in the Latin Gino. I think Latin you just say Gino. I engender, I generate. While Mother Gignone has vanished from memory with the puppet shows of our grandparents, we are still familiar with trundle beds and nesting dolls, which emerge ad infinitum one from the other. Gino is related to the Greek ginomai, I become, used by Plato in opposition to eimi, I am. The stork, like the gignone, stands out as the privileged image of the mother, she who multiplies, brings into the world, engenders, and sends toward the future what she has engendered. It is in some way a symbol of the origin of life, ever renewing, of spring or the first days, and generally speaking, a symbol of what becomes, as opposed to what is. Alright, donkey skin stories. If donkey skin was told to me, the extreme pleasure that the fabulist Jean La Fontaine in 1678 said he could take in this was certainly not limited to the single hearing of the final tale, which was later rendered in verse by Perrault, who dedicated it to the Marquis de Lambert for its first publication with Griselidis and Suhai Ridicule, ridiculous wishes. The year preceding the La Fontaine's death, in the verse of La Fontaine, donkey skin was taken, as it was long before him to generally designate a tall tale. But why was the title of this particular story able to prevail over so many others in this way? It was probably not by chance that Perrault chose the story of donkey skin for his first publication of a narrative embracing the marvelous. Perhaps he held a particular affection for that story. Perhaps he also saw it as a prototype of this category of stories because of its central theme, evoked by the title. The greatest beauty in the world hides beneath the vilest form of clothing, the skin of the most rustic and scorned mount, one often considered as the stupidest. There is a clear allusion to the contrast between the coarseness and absurdity that free thinkers and delicate courtiers alike could attribute during this era to stories taken from folk tradition and the actual extent of the wealth of teaching and poetry they carried. There is nothing appealing about a donkey skin, and the poor beauty herself was often taken as a symbol of a mount leading toward darkness, a darkness some saw as Satan and his works, and others as the obscure nature of beliefs they called superstitions. However, the reputation of this animal is far from always being negative, as it was the mount used by the Holy Family on their flight into Egypt. Then again, by Christ on his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Its praises were also sung during the high point of the Middle Ages in the Mass of the Donkey. The strength and quality of the ass have brought into the church gold from Arabia with the incense and myrrh of Saba. You work, Lord Donkey, you work. More exactly, the donkey is the image of a vehicle from the other world. That boundless ocean that stretches from the other side of the mirror, which is known in the common tongue as the beyond, and one of whose domains in psychoanalytic vocabulary is designed by the notion of the unconscious. It is certainly from this beyond that the donkey brought the church gold from Arabia with the incense and myrrh of Saba. Just as the nasty skin of the one from the tail teaches and hides the very precious and beautiful princess once she flees from the palace. And there is a verse in French with the translation, so I'm just going to read the translation. So clean had nature formed him, the donkey, that he never produced dung, but pennies gold as the sun, and coins of all kinds that would be collected from his blonde bedding every morning when he awoke. The tales of donkey skin are the stories that, beneath their rough and simple appearance, transport the gold from nature's imaginal realm to you and me. All right, now we are up to the term fairy tales. The expression fairy tales is the most widespread one today. Perhaps this has been true since the beginning of the 18th century, when these narratives became a literary genre that was quite popular with the French court. Fairies, however, rarely appear under this name in the tales of authentic folk origin and never as the main characters. They are generally discreet assistants who magically step in on the hero's journey to help them achieve their ends, and their support plays a decisive role in how the plot unfolds. There are no tales of wonder without the intervention of players like these. It is precisely the presence of these mysterious agents that distinguishes fairy tales from other kinds of stories, such as the moral tales, intended to educate people to conform to the moral norms of society. The facetious tales told to amuse one's audience, and the animal stories and nursery rhymes and other stock phrases children used in their games. The role of the fairy or a being of that nature is major in the unfolding of the stories in which a relationship with initiation can be seen, in the sense of this word as I will define it later. But the major role can also be taken by one of a host of other characters. The devil's daughter or grandmother, the ogre's wife, or the holy virgin, the future spouse of the hero or the horse on which he travels and who generally talks to him and gives him guidance, the animals that cross his path, a plant, a stone, an object given as a gift, or that was found or stolen, and sometimes even several of these beings or things at the same time. It is worth noting that the word fairy is closely connected to that of the fata, whom the Romans saw as the mistress of destiny. In this way, we sometimes see the fairies step in at the birth of the heroes or heroines to bestow on them certain positive or negative qualities, which will determine the direction their futures will take. But they never fail to appear at the crossroads of the hero's adventure to indicate through inspiration what road to take. Who, moreover, could deny with any certainty their actual existence, under whatever form they might be envisioned in the life we call real, or their being behind the past encounters that put us on our particular paths that led us toward these encounters. Alright. Fairy, like the Latin fata, forms part of a family whose origin revolves around the Indo-European root ba, B-H-A, which expresses the illumination of the word as shown by the Greek verb phemi, P-H-E-M-I. I make visible, I manifest my thought through words. We find the same root in phone, voice, in symphony, in phanos, lantern, in phenomenon, in diaphanous, and in fantastic. The fairies are the words of the horse on whose back each of us have travelled through the spaces and times that separate our births from our deaths. Their voices guide us on the paths we take each day, and they shed the light of their unpredictable lanterns on us. We can choose whether to believe in them or not, to listen to the good or the bad ones, or not, to distinguish one from another or not, or to follow or ignore their wise advice or ill counsel. The fates leave us full freedom to choose. As for their magic wands, they are the keys to concealed doors, hidden in the familiar decor of our world that gives access to other worlds. Vehicles for invisible horizons in both space and time, the words of Mother Nature, the deep blue sea that teaches those who fish for golden fish. These voices come from the land of paradise to help grow those they awaken to the rustic arks where slumber all the treasures of the first days and their miracles, tales of wonder, are paths towards the light that gleams in the depths of the night. Well, that was a lovely little paragraph. All right. We're now up to the functions attributed to the tale of marvels. How are we for time? Okay. Plenty of time. While Charles Perrault claimed to find a very well thought out morality in the tales of Mother Goose, the Grimm brothers saw them as fragments of a broken precious stone that had been scattered over the ground in the middle of the grass and flowers, the last echoes of ancient myths. In the middle of the last century, Louis Marin deplored the educational role played by these tales on language, and the influence on education and social integration played by the conditions in which they were passed on during the evening. In the domain of psychoanalysis, Bruno Bettelheim emphasized their therapeutic and formative influence on children and adolescents. And I will say, we remember that Rudolf Steiner said they are nutrition for the soul. While Jung and the members of his school saw them as archetypes of the collective unconscious and the keys to a dialogue with the powers of that unconscious. And what we are going with in Otherworld Connections is we want to find keys to living a righteous, moral life, a creative life, and a life that's in service to others, and one where we are, we are happy and we're on our path and we're doing what needs to be done, which also happens to be what we want to do. And we've uncovered things about, how to go about life, what to take seriously, what not to take too seriously, things to do with living a balanced life and stuff like that. René Lucien Rousseau, for his part, envisions the tale as the expression of a collective dream of humanity, a waking dream that would be a veritable engine for awaking individual awareness. And that's, just stepping out of that again, that's something that that I say, well, not exactly, but the point is that this René Lucien Rousseau, saying it's an engine for awakening individual awareness, is similar to what I'm saying is the point of it for kids. And, as Steiner says, it's food for the soul, nutrition for the soul. We need to give the right nutrition for the souls of the children. And these symbolic sequences in the fairy tales, I believe, help to awaken that individual awareness later in life. Jack Zipes, we've looked at some of his books, adopts a more particular point of view when he explains how the literary composing of folk themes can be twisted in such a way to shape children's minds so that they yield to the rules of the society in which they are born and are destined to grow, thereby inspiring the development of the society in a desired direction. And let's put that in a more sinister way, which is what I think a lot of us here, the listeners on Revolution Radio and presenters on Revolution Radio will probably agree with. If we look at, say, Disney films, well, on one hand, these old tales are, connected to this, are there in the collective unconscious. They are these sequence of symbols, these, sort of tarot visual, these tarot symbolic poem thingies have been around for a really long time. So they speak to a part of us. They are connected to a part of us that's unconscious and ancient, and that can be used, well, for profit, right? At a base level, we can say Disney takes these old stories. They may put a thing or two in them. But what I would say is, what I believe is that Disney does is they obviously, and the movie industry, right? A lot of the good movies are based on fairy tales because it's just what works. These are archetypes, and these are archetypal stories. What Disney does is, first off, they do for profit. And secondly, they keep people glued to the TV. And the TV, as the device itself, is, as we've uncovered here on Otherworld Connections, extremely... actually, on the Secret Kindergarten Grown-Ups edition, you can find on my website, secretkindergarten.com, that the TV just basically damages the mind. And I think, a spoonful of sugar helps a medicine go down. So the fairy tale itself is a spoonful of sugar for whatever medicine these industries are trying to put into the minds of humanity. All right. So in a way, Jack Sipes has a point. Jack Sipes, I think, missed the full picture and I think he did because of how he spoke of the Brothers Grimm. And what we've discovered, thanks to, are we even allowed to say Anna's Archive.org? Well, Anna's Archive, I found Teutonic Mythology by Jacob Grimm. And that just blew my mind because at face value, you're going to land on Jack Sipes books and, feminist printings, neo-feminist printings of, arguments against fairy tales. And Jack Sipes kind of throws it away. And I think he didn't, I could be wrong, but I don't think he came across Teutonic Mythology by the Brothers Grimm. I think he was going with that the tales themselves are to control people, essentially, to indoctrinate. I think it's close, but no cigar. So anyway, bit of a ramble there, but I hope that makes sense. Whatever the case may be, the old themes have travelled through the millennia and through all lands, indifferent to all beliefs and politics as well as any moral or civic rules, beyond which they have been able to keep their message intact. These messages are as varied and numerous as the individuals they reach, whom they never stop addressing personally, because the stories are both universal and different from each other, just as everyone who hears them is unique. This is where I say the different toppings on the... There's a pizza, but they're different toppings. The horizon of a fairy tale is as impossible to place as that of a landscape, and this is why analysis of them will always be infinitely incomplete. No matter what one thinks to have discovered in this horizon, it is never worth what will always remain possible to discover. And this is the tricky thing about symbology. This is the tricky thing about reading the tarot. I do believe that there are... Let's put it this way. You do a tarot reading for you. Then what I say is angels and fairies. What this other world is doing is trying to send you personally a message. And you as a human being have all these faculties and potentials and powers. And the message does not ignore all those things. So, and if you want to say, what does a snake symbolize, for example? And let's just go, because it is the year of the snake. The year of the snake. And I figured I'm just going to take my time and enjoy myself more with this show. And then you just get to see that I am just who I am. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. So if I'm dumb with something, I just say that I'm dumb, or you'll know. So, if we look at snake, for example. Okay, that's not in the tarot. But say you get a synchronicity, or you have a dream about a snake. I didn't know it was the year of the snake, but I've just weirdly been having dreams about snakes lately. So what do? You go to a book, right? It's like a dictionary. You want to know the meaning of a word. And then words have other words that are associated with it, right? Synonyms. And there might be multiple meanings to the one word. And, as I say, the different toppings on the same pizza, I think the magic of the fairy tales is I actually don't think they are infinitely, I don't think they are always infinitely incomplete. I think they are always infinitely complete in that there might be different toppings, but it's always a pizza. It's not a different dish. Does that make sense? Because we're talking nutrition for the soul, right? So someone 1,000 years from now, if there even is a planet Earth, I'm in New Zealand, 2025, say a woman 1,000 years from now on the other side of the world gets a fairy tale and decodes it. Well, there's going to be some context to whatever's going on 1,000 years from now, culturally and systematically and all that stuff, and whatever problems there are at that time. They're going to be the context that changes the toppings of the pizza, but the message in the story is still going to be that same type of dish, is what I'm saying. And it might be decoded for a message to do with the mental plane, or it might be a message decoded with the physical plane. It might be a message decoded with one stage of life, 0 to 7 years old, or it might be to do with like a later stage of life, or it might be to do with overall life, or it might be to do with just one particular principle. But all of those decodes make up that message. Correspondences is what I'm talking about. There will be correspondences to all the messages. So anyway, just to say, like, sort of as an example of, where Bernard Rogers says that they'll always be infinitely, because of the analysis, we can't see the landscape. We have to interpret the landscape. So if we get, say, a snake show up for whatever reason, you might see it on the TV and it just gives you a bit of a standout feeling. So if we look at, what I do, if it's animals, I look at Dr. Stephen Farmer. I find his interpretations cross-cultural and, cross-generational. So, if there is a symbology for a snake, 99% of those meanings and definitions will be in his work. If snake shows up, it means you are about to go through some significant personal changes, so intense and dramatic that an old self will metaphorically die as a new self emerges. And, it is interesting that this year and, everything that is happening with, in America, I never speak about these things because, well, first off, I'm not American, and I think it's hubris to really comment, but it is a global thing, right, what's going on. But it's very interesting that the zeitgeist is going through a change, right? And it is, funnily enough, the year of the snake. And what we are seeing is a metaphorical death of things that we wanted to go away. That's what it's looking like. I'm not saying anything more than that, but that's the vibe, all right? That is the vibe. And that's a good vibe. So snake also means you're going to feel a surge of energy that will sharpen your senses, alert your mental faculties, and open up new channels of awareness. Or you're about to resolve a long-standing issue. It is a theme of transformation, right? One that has required a great deal of your attention. By seeing things in a new light, it will be a good time for you to start doing yoga, tantric or kundalini. You'll experience a dramatic and unexpected physical or emotional healing very soon, coming from an unexpected source. Okay, so what I'm saying here is there was stuff to do with the physical in this symbol. Doing yoga, tantric or kundalini. And actually, doing things like yoga, for example, or physical exercise will affect your attributes or condition. Like, say, for example, the warrior pose in yoga is one that I do because of my hips and my groin. I've got issues like with pain and weakness there. And that's all connected to strength, overall strength, and confidence, and resilience, and things like that, but mainly like fortitude, right? So when I do that, I actually feel mentally more powerful, more strong. So like, say if there was a fairy tale with a snake in it, then you could go with like, oh, this is to do with a new self, creating a new self, or a regeneration, or like a renewal. And the story could be about renewal, but it also could be a story about something to do. It could be, you could swing it to be something to do with physical healing or emotional healing. And you could take that slant and that sequence of symbols, you would still be able to interpret. So someone could say, I disagree. This story about the snake is actually about, yoga and what certain poses in yoga could do or something. And then someone could say, oh, I disagree. The snake actually means, this snake story is to do with actually creating a new self. Well, actually, if you did this yoga, for example, you would create a new self. What I'm saying is you could get to the same pizza from either angle, because they are synonymous, and things you do with your body correspond to things that go on your mind, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. All right. How are we for time? Just a few minutes left. Come on. There is a story in the Grimm Brothers anthology of a poor fisherman who one day finds a golden fish in his net. Heeding the animal's advice, he tosses it back into the water. Upon his return, he finds in the place of his wretched shack a palace where his wife, magnificently clad, happily awaits him. They are given a life of ease with a cupboard that never runs out of food, but his wife's curiosity. She cannot stand not knowing the origin of his sudden fortune. She quickly spoils everything. No sooner has the secret been revealed than the palace vanishes, and his wife finds herself once more clad in rags inside her miserable hut, and the inexhaustible source of food has vanished. The fisherman must go back to sea to earn his pittance. With the first cast of his net, he again catches the marvelous fish, who this time agrees to let the couple dine on him. 9 months after this feast, 2 gold children are born, who are destined to go through perilous adventures before fulfilling their high destinies. One of the messages of this story, among many others, is transparent. When left alive in the sea, that is to say, not exposed on the land of consciousness, where it can be dried out by an explanation, the treasure that dwells within the depths of a story transmit riches that it can take back from whoever attaches it to a dry analysis. This is clearly what Marie-Louise von Franz, I think we've had a little look at her work, I think. I'm currently looking at some stuff now, but we will explore her work at some point. Expressed at the beginning of her book, L'interprétation des contes des filles. Ooh la la. When recalling that Jung said of dream that it is its own best explanation. Yeah, I like that. She added that as much can be said about fairy tales, and that an explanation, in one sense, is a dimming of the original light that shines in myth or even dream. But he or she who eats the golden fish can know adventures and transformations. Transformations. The themes of authentic folktales are signal carriers that seem to mark stages on the paths of initiation in the universal and the highest meaning of this term. It is in quest of these signals that we shall try to attach ourselves, not through attempts at explanation from which charming fossils might emerge, but through the more direct means that only living analogy can provide. Well, yeah, it's a bit of a handful, right? But think about all the people out there that haven't even given any of this like one iota of thought at all. I mean, what I'm saying is, if you're special if you understand that, we are spiritual beings, and there is a spiritual element, and then there is a symbolic thing, and then there is this relationship between that which we can't see and that which we can in our lives. And if you already know that, that's the point that they're making here. The dream is its own best explanation. Well, just the fact that you know that there's meanings inside the dream, well, you're pretty much most of the way there. Okay, and I'm probably a bit naughty for making attempts at explanation from which charming fossils emerge. But hey, the rhetoric will get better as we learn more, and we'll be able to just really pinpoint it, narrow it down, and get it right. And that's all we have for today. So, that was the end of Chapter 1. Chapter 1 of Bernard Rogers' 2013 book, The Initiatory Path in Fairy Tales, The Alchemical Secrets of Mother Goose. So stay tuned for next week, where we will continue by reading Chapter 2. And yeah, that's about it. You're lucky to have me here. It's an absolute pleasure for you to listen to me. Oh, seriously, thanks so much for tuning in. Take care, everyone. Love you guys. Bye for now.